The Last of Us Part 2 is a masterpiece. Yes, I will start this video off with a random factual statement. The Last of Us Part 2 ended perfectly. Ellie losing everything and pretty much having to rebuild her life back in Jackson after getting closure from Joel's death. And Abby is inferred to have reached the Fireflies on Catalina Island with Lev. It's a great ending to a long and emotional story. A great sequel to tie up a series. So why do we need a part 3? Who the fuck knows, honestly? What do we need next? More of Abby and Lev doing what, though? A huge part of the audience dislikes her and her story is kind of tied up in the end anyway. I can see them going for a thing where like the Fireflies aren't actually on Catalina Island, or they're a lot different in some way and some dilemma appears, but I think a majority of the audience would be disinterested, although I would have no issue with a story like this. Then I see people say that they want to see Tommy and Joel right after the outbreak, and I just think that shit would be a little unnecessary. I ain't worried about them boys. Joel been dead and we don't need no more of him in my opinion. We don't even really need more of Tommy, even though that would be slightly interesting to see. Maybe a game about Tommy, but even that just feels like holding on to something that we don't need.
Get the fuck out of here!
This is where the issue of unnecessary sequels comes in. Call of Duty alone needs to stop making bullshit. The Black Ops games ended fine. Black Ops 1 and 2 were golden. Fantastically written games with memorable and fun set pieces. And then they make a third game. Of course. And it's just bullshit. Train go boom and shit, no connection to Black Ops at all. Then they make Black Ops Cold War. Now this is a good game, just not really a good sequel. This is the same issue with Black Ops 6 as well. We don't even need to mention Black Ops 4. This shit is weak. We do not need 7 Black Ops games. We really needed just the 2, or maybe even just the third well-made sequel or prequel, and then that could end it off. But the studios needed money. Because they always do. The series should have learned from itself. The original Modern Warfare trilogy ends perfectly. Everything is wrapped up and fine. It doesn't need a prequel or a sequel. Makarov dies and the game is ended. The previous games touch on the story perfectly. We don't need to bring out more sequels to series that have already ended fine. And if you're gonna make a third game, you better do something good with it, or at least set up your second game to end in a way that allows for a third game. Metal Gear Survive is fucking garbage. End the video. Did we really need this after the also unnecessary masterpiece of Metal Gear Solid 5? Fuck no, we didn't. We didn't need most of these sequels honestly, but they work because Kojima is Jesus. Did the Just Cause series really need a fourth game? Despite the fact that the story of the game is extremely ignorable, Just Cause 4 felt like a soulless fourth game that kind of just tried to be a better looking Just Cause 3. Unnecessary as fuck. Dying Light 2 I also believe partly falls into the same situation as Just Cause 4. Dying Light 2 just feels wrong. Like something just isn't here with it. It's just weaker. I played Dying Light 1 and found it very fun. Then I played Dying Light 2 and like the difference in combat alone just feels strange. It feels like there is no weight to anything in Dying Light 2. And whenever a game kind of removes the weighty feel of combat, then the game usually just feels like ass. If you remove the weight of combat, then it just feels like a stagnant cardboard cutout is just shooting paper or something. It doesn't feel right. Cyberpunk definitely has a little bit of this problem, I feel. It just feels like when you shoot someone, they die. Yeah. Let that sink in. Back to the point. Dying Light 2 does have some very fun parkour and mechanics, but it isn't the greatest sequel. And that is a point a lot of sequels suck at. They can be fundamentally great games in every way, but they fail to be great sequels. The Last of Us Part 2 is kind of an example of this. The target audience for The Last of Us Part 1 and The Last of Us Part 2 is very different. One game is hopeful and pretty optimistic in a dark and gritty world. The other is a bleak, depressing, sluggish battle in the same shitty dark world. The Last of Us Part 2 is a fantastic game by itself, but it kind of fails as a sequel, especially as a sequel for the same audience. And this is the point of the video. Did you read the title? This is the point right here. Boom. Going back to Metal Gear Solid. Metal Gear Solid 5 is very fun and has a lot of fun mechanics. Even though it is pretty repetitive, it just doesn't work as a Metal Gear Solid game. Hitman Absolution is extremely fun and is a pretty good stealth game, and even kind of a good shooter game if you treat it as such. But as a Hitman game, it is very polarizing. compared to the rest of the series. It becomes a lot more goofier with these sexy nun characters and these over-the-top exaggerated antagonists, and its tone is just messy and it's all over the place in general. Fallout 4 innovated quite a bit from its predecessors and is a pretty fun game, but it fails to be a good Fallout game, or even a decent RPG. Most of the multiple choice options that you have are just yes, no, and maybe so, with pretty shallow storylines not allowing for much diversion. It's built in a way that doesn't allow for a ton of variety, even in its side quests. Fallout 3 also sort of had the same problem with its switch up from turn-based to a full-fledged first third-person RPG style game, which changed the games in a good way in my opinion. Mass Effect Andromeda is not a good Mass Effect game, but it is a great sci-fi game alone. Also, not to mention the messiness the other Mass Effect games have in their sequels. I don't know if anyone remembers this game, but Infamous Second Son is not a very good follow-up to the previous Infamous games, but holy shit was that game fun as hell. There are great sequels that are also great games. Resident Evil is a fantastic point of this. Yes, their games are pretty disjointed, but they kind of differ from this formula, usually followed by game series. You play with a different group of people in almost every Resident Evil game, and it works perfectly. They utilize this kind of formula of an original story inside a world that already exists. This is why Resident Evil 4 worked so well when it first came out, connected enough to the original games to be in the same universe, following a character we have previously seen, but still in a completely different setting. Resident Evil 7 also did the same thing, another reset acting as an original story in an already existing world with even a different main character and set of characters that we have never seen before, and it worked perfectly. Arguably a whole different story entirely that is for some reason in the same universe. This formula they have used has allowed them to make 9 main entry games. This is almost impossible to do with any other series, because dudes ain't really as gifted as Capcom and him. But also, in the same breath, we can turn and see that Resident Evil has flaws of this formula in its own games. Resident Evil 4 was great, which led to Resident Evil 5, which was very fun as a game on its own, but was not a great follow-up. This then led to Resident Evil 6, which was just a fucking mess of a Resident Evil game. Then Resident Evil 7 led to Resident Evil 8, which was yet another sort of switch up from the previous entry. This is a consistency problem, which we will get into later. Resident Evil also benefits from how they position the series as a sort of anthological-like series, which allows them to be a bit more flexible with each title. Dead Rising was another game that attempted to do the sort of same thing as Resident Evil. Original stories in the same universe. The issue is that they lost the plot on the third game, and it ain't worked really well. Watch Dogs is a series that does its job fantastically with this formula. The first 2 games are another part of the rule that Resident Evil follows. Watch Dogs 1 is about Aiden Pierce, and it wraps his story up perfectly by the end of the game. Watch Dogs 2 is a much more entertaining sequel which dropped a lot of the grittiness of the first game, and it's a pretty good game. Maybe not a great sequel in relation to the first game, but a great sequel to the already existing universe of Watch Dogs with innovation that complements the already existing system. Watch Dogs 2 was almost completely inconsistent with the first game, but it worked because it was only the second title in the series, which allowed for a little bit more wiggle room with the fuckery that they could do. Watch Dogs Legion is unnecessary. It's a third game that does have some fun bits, but it is a completely unnecessary sequel, and a bad one at that. It is entirely inconsistent. The Uncharted series, Naughty Dog's second greatest hit. I have only played the first Uncharted and part of the second game, so I don't have a great amount of room to speak, but Uncharted 5 has to be unnecessary. 4 games is usually enough in any series, and I've seen people say Uncharted 4 ends great. The only way they could make a half-decent Uncharted 5 is probably through the same way they made the Lost Legacy game. The formula works when utilized well. Far Cry is another example of this. Games taking place in all different settings and times, but still being great because they pretty much are their own games tied to the same universe, I guess. These games are more connected through their innovation in mechanics and gameplay, and a little bit less the story. Kind of bad in terms of traditional sequels, but great games. Assassin's Creed is a series that follows yet the same formula, but they fail to be consistent in my opinion, which leads them to also being some of them being bad sequels. Assassin's Creed Odyssey is a pretty bad Assassin's Creed game. It strays very far away from the traditional style and becomes an RPG-like superhero game, while it is a decent game otherwise. Assassin's Creed Origins and Syndicate also sort of do this. While they both introduce some RPG elements and Syndicate kind of tones the difficulty down a lot as well as many other things, they are very fun games. Origins is an incredibly fun game with a very interesting story, and it did serve as a sort of soft reboot for the franchise. The issue is that it led to the creation of Odyssey, which was a pretty bad entry for the series. And honestly, I couldn't tell you the story of these fucking games besides them all being assassins and gang members or some shit. Medieval Crips and Bloods. The Borderlands series is one of my favorite series ever, but they did not really need the third game in the way it was made. It was still a fantastic game gameplay-wise. It needed a revival, and the game fell kind of flat in that regard, I believe, and people didn't really want a fourth game. Borderlands 4 is just unnecessary. I haven't played it personally, but I can tell you pretty confidently, you wanted this, amigo. It ain't nobody who wanted this game. One thing people fail to realize is that game series like Call of Duty, 2K, and GTA need to exist. They're like the foundation of gaming, the thing the average gamer comes back to, and the games that people see as the icons of the gaming industry. Like the basics. Just like we need worker bees, we need these dumbass games to exist, hence why I ain't go too hard on Call of Duty or mention the other two. Despite that, GTA actually has some pretty good sequels within its universe utilizing the same rule. They are just games that are necessary. They must exist. Also, the third game in a trilogy is not always a bad game. The Witcher 3 is a show of this. Even though I don't really like that game, it is a good sequel. Metal Gear Solid 3, Mass Effect 3, God of War 3 are all pretty necessary games and also pretty good ones. Mafia 3 is often cited as the worst game in the series, but it's the best in terms of gameplay, and the story is pretty entertaining despite it going out from the formula of the first two pretty heavily. Once again, a good game, bad sequel. They tried to reel it back in with Mafia the Old Country, but Max Payne is a game series that didn't really need a third game, and yes, the second game kind of ends in a way that would allow for a third game. It's still kind of unnecessary. The third game ends fine, even though it is pretty polarizing to the Max Payne story and the games in terms of setting and formula. Max's story is over at the end of the third game, and that's what most series should strive for. Ending it by the third game or letting the first or second game be definitive. For most series, this should be it. I believe games should stop striving for franchises and series. The more expansion of games we have in terms of just games without sequels allows for diversity of games, and will probably lead more people to stop believing that gaming is dying, even though it isn't. And along with this, instead of making sequels on top of other sequels, make sequels for games that actually need it. Deus Ex Mankind Divided is begging for a sequel. Give that series a third game. Cyberpunk 2077 is the perfect game to give a sequel to. Expanding the world of that game would not only be pretty fucking profitable, but it would make the game world a lot more interesting and engaging, especially with all the actual unsolved and mysterious theories surrounding the game and its DLCs, characters, this, that, and the best way to create a sequel is to either make a good successor in relation to the original game and its story, examples being arguably The Last of Us Part 2, The Witcher 3, The Evil Within 2, Mass Effect 3, and dare I say it, Red Dead Redemption 2, and fucking Death Stranding. The other option is to make a good game with an original story in the same universe. Watch Dogs 2, Resident Evil, any of them, GTA, Far Cry 2, 3, 4, and 5, arguably Far Cry 6. A lot of the original Assassin's Creed games get this. Fallout gets this, and its setting works perfectly for it. A lot of sequels struggle to be consistent, whether that be with the theme, the story, the gameplay, the setting, etc. The Last of Us suffers from this, but I still consider it a fantastic sequel because I was a part of the target audience for the second game. Max Payne 3 suffers from this by turning away from the gritty setting of New York to the completely different setting of South America. Most games fail to be consistent in some way, which leads them to being bad games, or more accurately, bad sequels. On the flip side, a lot of game series are too consistent, and what I mean by this is that they fail to innovate or change. Tons of Ubisoft games suffer from this. Assassin's Creed hasn't really done anything but become more repetitive and change the setting. Same with recent Ghost Recon games. Mafia 3 is a very fun game, but it was a very polarizing game in comparison to the rest of the series. They tried to change things up as well with their Ghost Recon Wildlands type boss system, but the game was sort of a mess, with a lot of bugs and jankiness along with the entirely repetitive system that stood way too far out from the previous two games. Borderlands 4 is a case of just stretching a series too much. The story is pretty weak, but the gameplay is very fun, and that honestly kind of is the point of the series, but at some point a series just has to stop, especially a series that isn't too story focused and isn't really innovative. Kind of like Just Cause. Part of making a good sequel is by innovating. Without innovation or a good story following from the previous game, it becomes a lot harder to make a good sequel. To make a good sequel, you must also know when to end a story and just make a spin-off or something, dude. Like, please. The creators must understand the story and the previous games to make a good third game. The Last of Us Part 3 is pretty unnecessary from the viewpoint of being a sequel, and another switch up in the formula for the third would be slightly polarizing, most likely leading to the same situation Max Payne 3 was in. I do hope that if The Last of Us Part 3 comes out, that it is good. I love the series and would love to see it succeed more, but it's just still kind of unnecessary. It needs to be handled properly. Good games, bad sequels. We don't need more video games, and that's not what I'm saying. Well, that is what I'm saying. But my point is that we need more originality and less video games that follow the same story. Even games that are sequels that are just a different part of the same video game universe would be an improvement. I hope y'all enjoyed this video. This took a minute, but let me know what y'all think about all of this. Your opinion of a third entry to The Last of Us, what y'all think some good sequels are, or more games that are bad sequels but great games. Honestly, I'm really just a Neanderthal who just throws their opinions on the internet like everyone else. I'm not a scholar on this shit. I'm probably wrong about a lot of these games, but it's all what I think. Thank y'all so much for watching. Hit that like, subscribe, comment down below if you got something to say. I'm Bobby. And I'm
No, I'm not a college boy. I am a so icy boy. I'm tatted like a biker boy. We are the so icy gang. Tatted like a biker gang. Straight it up, wet it up, wet it up, and bet it up. Bitch, you don't wanna bet. Pull up in my Chevy vet. Nah, you ain't ready yet. Wetter than your girl get. Don't see Bonner, don't see Shade. Don't you wanna see the boy? See the boy, see the boy. Come and